On the night of November 24, 1971, around 8 p.m., two American Air Force fighter jets were chasing a flight at an altitude of 10,000 feet. This flight had a hijacker on board who had extorted $200,000 in ransom from the U.S. government in Portland, which would be about 144 crores in today's money. The plane was still under his control, and the pilot was flying it towards Reno City at his command. During this time, it was pitch dark at that altitude. Strong winds were blowing. The temperature was -7 degrees Celsius, and freezing rain was falling. Despite these dire conditions, both fighter jets were following the hijacked plane, keeping a close eye on it to catch the hijacker. But the hijacker's intentions were far beyond what the American Air Force and FBI had anticipated. Amidst the dark night, strong winds, and bone-chilling cold, at an altitude of 10,000 feet, the hijacker parachuted out of the plane with the money. Neither anyone inside the plane nor the pilots in the trailing fighter jets noticed his act. After that, it was as if the earth swallowed the hijacker, or the sky took him. No trace of him could be found. Even after decades of investigation, neither his body was found, nor was he ever caught alive. This is the story of the hijacker known to the world as D.B. Cooper, who carried out a hijacking that became the only unsolved hijacking case in the history of American commercial aviation. More than 50 years have passed, and it remains a mystery who D.B. Cooper was, where he came from, and where he disappeared in the dark of night in the middle of the sky. Hawk calling wolf, D.B. Cooper jumped from an airliner in flight and demanded a $200,000 ransom and a parachute. 3:05, we have a hawk in progress. He said to me, all I have to do is attach this wire to this gadget, and we'll be done. What really happened to D.B. Cooper? You believe your uncle was D.B. Cooper, but there's never been a trace of Cooper or his true identity. It does feel good to unveil that this is the only unsolved hijacking in American history. The story begins on November 24, 1971, at Portland International Airport in America, from where a Boeing 727 plane was about to take off for Seattle-Tacoma International Airport as usual. Around 2 p.m., a man about 45 years old, wearing a black business suit, white shirt, black tie, and black sunglasses, entered the airport with a black briefcase to go to Seattle on this plane. This person identified himself as Dan Cooper, paid $20 at the Northwest Orient Airlines counter for a one-way ticket to Seattle, and proceeded towards the boarding gate. In the 1970s, there were no security checks for passengers on domestic flights, nor was anyone's identity verified. Any passenger could travel under any name by simply buying a flight ticket. Therefore, Dan Cooper's identity was neither verified, nor was his briefcase checked, and he boarded Flight 305. At 2:50 p.m., Flight 305 took off, commanded by Captain William A. Scott. The plane had a total of 37 passengers and 6 crew members. This was a very short route flight in America, taking only half an hour to reach Seattle-Tacoma from Portland. But this day, the flight was going to be delayed in reaching its destination, and in the meantime, something was about to happen that would forever make its mark in the pages of history. After the flight took off, while all the passengers were engrossed in their own activities, Dan Cooper was sitting in the last row, seat 18C, enjoying a cigarette and a bourbon and soda. In the 1970s, flight travel rules and regulations were quite different from today. At that time, smoking was allowed on flights. After settling in, Cooper handed a note to Florence Schaffner, a flight attendant sitting a short distance away. Flight attendant Schaffner thought he was flirting with her, so she casually put the note in her pocket without reading it. After some time, when Cooper did not get any reaction from Schaffner regarding the note, he stopped her as she passed by and whispered, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Schaffner still thought it was a joke, but when she opened and read the note, her face turned pale. It read, "Miss, I have a bomb in my briefcase and want you to sit by me." Reading this, Schaffner looked at Cooper, who, pointing to his briefcase, told her that his briefcase contained a bomb. This incident of a few seconds stunned Schaffner. Frightened, she immediately called her coworker Tina Mucklow over, told her everything, and handed her the note. Tina Mucklow was also scared after reading what was written in the note. but she bravely asked Cooper if he was joking. In response, the next moment, Cooper opened his briefcase for both flight attendants, revealing 8 red sticks of dynamite taped together, connected to a battery and many wires. Seeing this, Schaffner and Tina Mucklow were terrified. Further increasing their panic, Cooper held 2 wires in his hand and told them that the plane had been hijacked and that he could detonate the bomb and blow up the plane whenever he wanted. From here, Cooper's heist had begun. He closed the briefcase and had Schaffner write down his demands. Cooper wanted $200,000 American dollars, 2 back parachutes, and 2 front parachutes by 5 p.m. He also demanded that when the plane landed in Seattle, a fuel truck should be ready beforehand to refuel it. He sent Schaffner to deliver his list of demands to the pilot with the warning that if his demands were not met or if any trickery was attempted, he would detonate the bomb. A frightened Schaffner went into the cockpit and told pilot William Scott and the crew everything. The pilot immediately informed Seattle-Tacoma Air Traffic Control about the hijacking via radio, relaying the hijackers' demands. Panic broke out at ATC, and all this information was forwarded to the local police and the FBI. The news of the hijacking put the FBI on alert, and they immediately contacted Donald Nyrop, the president of Northwest Orient Airlines, regarding the matter. Donald Nyrop was concerned about the lives of the passengers and the reputation of his airline. So, understanding the gravity of the situation, he agreed to all of Cooper's demands without any hesitation. While all this was happening, Tina Mucklow was sitting in the seat next to Cooper, acting as a communication link between Cooper and the pilot. She was conveying messages back and forth via the interphone. After some time, the American authorities informed the pilot that all of Cooper's demands had been accepted. Upon his demands being met, Cooper made another demand in front of Tina Mucklow. All the money given to him should be in $20 bills, and the plane should not land at the airport until all his requested items were ready on the ground. Tina conveyed Cooper's message to the pilot via the interphone, who then relayed it to the authorities. This was only about a half-hour flight, and half an hour had passed with all these discussions, and now Seattle Airport was just a few minutes away. It would take some more time to arrange Cooper's demands, so instead of landing at the airport, the plane started circling in the Seattle sky. During this, the most interesting thing was that no passenger on this plane had any idea that the plane they were on had been hijacked. All conversations between Cooper and the crew were happening very carefully so that the passengers would not feel any threat. Dan Cooper's behavior was also completely different from ordinary hijackers. There was no fear on his face, nor did he try to scare or threaten any passenger to get his way. He calmly carried out his act, smoking on his seat. To prevent panic among the passengers due to the delay, an announcement was made by the crew that due to a mechanical problem, the plane would take some time to land. After this announcement, the plane circled in the Seattle sky for about 2 hours, while in the meantime, the FBI had arranged $200,000 for Cooper from Seattle First National Bank and 4 parachutes from a flight school in Issaquah. During that era, banks kept certain funds separate for incidents like robbery, kidnapping, and hijacking, and the serial numbers of all those notes were recorded so that if such money, received as ransom by a criminal, was spent, its location could be traced and the criminal caught. In Cooper's case, this was also done, and the bank and the FBI had photographs and serial numbers of every note among the $200,000 that were now to be given to him. At 5:24 p.m., the captain was informed by ATC that the ransom money and parachutes were ready at the airport, and the plane could now land. This was conveyed to Cooper, who agreed with certain conditions. Through Tina Mucklow, who was sitting nearby, he told the pilot to land the plane on a less lit runway away from the main terminal, and that the money and parachutes should be brought to the plane by a single person. Additionally, he ordered the internal lights of the plane to be dimmed and all its windows to be closed, so that the FBI would not know about the movement inside the plane and Cooper's identity. Following all of Cooper's instructions, Flight 305 landed at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport at 5:46 p.m. An FBI agent with $200,000 and 4 parachutes arrived at the rear door of the Boeing 727. At that time, the Boeing 727 was one of the commercial planes whose doors also opened from the rear, where a staircase was attached for boarding and disembarking. Cooper had chosen this plane for the hijacking specifically because of this unique feature. At Cooper's command, Tina Mucklow exited the plane through the rear door and collected a bag full of $200,000 and 4 parachutes, which she handed over to Cooper. Upon Cooper's demands being fulfilled, all 36 passengers and 2 crew members were released. Everything happened so smoothly that still, no passenger had any idea that they had been held hostage for 3 hours. Now there were 5 people left on the plane: pilot William Scott, co-pilot Bill Radizak, flight engineer Harold Anderson, flight attendant Tina Mucklow, and Dan Cooper himself. So far, everything had gone according to Cooper's plan, and he had done it all very calmly and relaxed. But there was one thing that had started to frustrate him. After all the passengers had disembarked, the plane wasn't refueled for a long time. The delay was due to a problem with the fuel truck, but every moment at the airport felt heavy for Cooper. He suspected the FBI might be playing tricks on him. So Cooper, who usually behaved like a very calm gentleman, now became frustrated and started threatening the crew to refuel quickly. By now, the authorities had realized from Cooper's every move that he was a very cunning person who wouldn't be easy to trick. The way Cooper had asked for 4 parachutes instead of 1 was a very clever move. His demand for 4 parachutes made the FBI think he might jump with a crew member or passenger, so the FBI couldn't risk civilian lives by giving him a faulty parachute. Without getting entangled with Cooper's clever mind, 3 fuel trucks were immediately deployed to refuel the plane. After refueling, Cooper laid down some more conditions before the plane took off again. His first demand was that the plane should now be taken to Mexico. However, he was told that the plane couldn't be flown directly that far, as it would need to refuel once more midway to reach Mexico. After some deliberation, Cooper gave permission for a refuel at Reno International Airport in Nevada before Mexico. Cooper's second demand was that the plane's rear stairs should be kept open at all times. But taking off with open stairs was risky, so he was told that the rear stairs would be opened once the plane was airborne at his command. Cooper agreed to this as well and, laying down his next demands, ordered the plane to be kept below an altitude of 10,000 feet and flown at a speed of less than 150 knots. He also demanded that the plane be kept tilted at 15 degrees and the landing gears remain open. All his demands were met, and Flight 305 took off again at 7:46 p.m. The FBI was astonished by Cooper's meticulous calculations. This hijacker was not only polite, having never even been rude to anyone, let alone hurting or beating them throughout the entire journey, but he was also a clever and cunning criminal who came fully prepared for his mission. However, the FBI couldn't just sit idly by. So, as Flight 305 began moving towards Reno following Cooper's instructions on a low-altitude route named Victor 23, 2 F-16 fighter jets from Accord Air Force Base were deployed to intercept it. But these fighter jets were built for very high-speed flight. In such a situation, when the Boeing 727 itself was flying at 150 knots, both fighter jets needed to fly at an even slower speed to keep up. To solve this problem, both jets began following the flight by performing a series of S-turns. Additionally, a T-33 trainer jet was also sent for this task, which could maintain a low speed behind the flight. But this day was different. This incident was special. Anything normal happening during this time would have been a miracle. Evening had fallen, and the darkness of night had enveloped the entire atmosphere. The moon in the sky was barely visible, completely covered by clouds, resulting in minimal light. Strong winds, sub-zero temperatures, and freezing rain made it even more thrilling. Even in such conditions, 3 jets were chasing this flight at an altitude of 10,000 feet, whose passenger cabin held Cooper and Tina Mucklow, and where silence reigned. After a while of silence, Cooper told Tina to go to the cockpit and started putting on a parachute himself. When Tina began to instruct him on how to wear the parachute, he gestured that he didn't need her help, after which Tina started moving towards the cockpit. As Tina entered the cockpit and turned to close the cockpit door, she saw Cooper tying the money to his chest. At Cooper's gesture, she fully closed the door and sat with the rest of the crew. A few minutes later, around 8 p.m., a warning light illuminated in the cockpit, indicating that the plane's rear stairs had been opened. The pilot asked Cooper via interphone if someone should be sent to help him, to which Cooper only responded with anger. He didn't want any interference. At this point, the plane was far from reaching Reno, and below it were only mountains, rivers, and forests. The wind was rushing strongly into the plane. A few minutes later, at 8:13 p.m., the crew in the cockpit felt a very strong jolt and air pressure, which was then re-leveled by the pilot, causing the plane to stabilize after a short while. About 2 hours later, at 10:15 p.m., the plane landed at Reno Tahoe International Airport, with its rear stairs still open. The plane was surrounded by FBI agents, local police, and state troopers. The plane was searched, every nook and cranny was scoured, but no trace of Cooper was found. He was last seen when Tina Mucklow was closing the cockpit. After that, in the dark of night, chilling cold, and strong winds, he had jumped from the plane's rear door with $200,000 over an area of mountains, rivers, and forests. Due to bad weather, none of the 3 jets following him could see him jump. During the flight search, the FBI found Cooper's black tie, its clip, and 8 remaining cigarette butts from the seat where he was sitting. Additionally, 2 parachutes were recovered, which Cooper had left behind. But besides these, the FBI found neither the bomb nor the money, nor any trace of Cooper in the plane. Cooper had also taken the handwritten note he had given to the flight attendant. Everyone knew Cooper had jumped, but where? No one had a correct answer because no one had seen him jump. However, the flight crew provided an important piece of information in this case. A strong jolt was felt in the plane at 8:13 p.m. while passing through the Victor 23 route. Cooper must have jumped then. Thinking this, the pilot noted down the time and location. According to this route and timing, Cooper had jumped in the southwest area of Washington state, about 50 kilometers from Portland, in an area surrounded by forests and hills near the Columbia and Lewis rivers. In total, Cooper had circled back to the vicinity of Portland, from where he had hijacked the plane. A search team was immediately sent to the area, and with the help of the crew, a rough sketch of Dan Cooper was made. After this, the largest mission ever undertaken by the FBI to find a criminal in American history began, codenamed Norjack. At that time, neither the FBI nor the world knew that this was a case that would leave such a story on the pages of history, one that would be discussed for decades to come. The morning after Cooper's disappearance, when a large FBI team was sent to find Cooper, no trace of him could be found during several days of searching in that vast area of jungles, rivers, and mountains. To find his best possible landing location, the FBI even recreated the entire scene. For this, the same hijacked aircraft was flown on the same route with the same configuration, and a 200-pound sled was thrown from the plane's rear stairs from the location indicated by the pilot. This way, the possible landing zone that emerged was near Lake Merwin, a few miles southeast of Ariel and 40 miles north of Seattle. A search operation was also launched there by the FBI. Thousands of military troops and police officers searched the forests and rivers. Every farmhouse and house in the area was investigated, while thousands of military personnel were searching for Cooper on foot. Every inch of the area was also being scoured by helicopters. Additionally, a submarine was also deployed in Lake Merwin to find Cooper, and a spy plane, the State Route 71, was also engaged in this task. But even after a very long investigation, every tactic proved unsuccessful. Neither Cooper's body was found, nor was he caught alive. Neither the parachutes he used were found, nor was there any trace of the $200,000. As the FBI's frustration grew over this case, the media and public's fascination with it soared. Everyone wanted to know who that mysterious person was, where he came from, and where he disappeared into the darkness of the sky. The extent of the public's craze for this case can be gauged by the fact that when the hijacking occurred, a reporter mistakenly wrote his name as D.B. Cooper instead of Dan Cooper in the newspaper. After this, several other publication houses also used the same name. Since then, this name spread like wildfire around the world, and thus the name of that mysterious hijacker changed. However, Dan Cooper, the name he wrote on the ticket, was also a fake name, and upon inquiry, the FBI found no record of any person by that name. Later, it was discovered that Dan Cooper was the name of a character in a popular Belgian comic book from the 1950s, who was a Canadian jet pilot. Upon this information coming out, the FBI began to believe that the hijacker was inspired by this comic book and therefore named himself Dan Cooper. Initially, The FBI maintained that Cooper had not successfully jumped from the plane and had fallen and died somewhere. An FBI investigator, Ralph Himmelsbach, who had codenamed this entire mission Norjack, believed that Cooper might not have been able to open his parachute correctly and might have died upon hitting a mountain or a tree. Many other FBI agents and experts, like him, theorized that at the time Cooper jumped, the weather was extremely bad. It was dark night, and the temperature was below -7 degrees Celsius. Strong winds were blowing, and freezing rain was falling. In such bad weather, Cooper had chosen military parachutes, which were very difficult to operate, instead of easy-to-use parachutes for the jump. Additionally, his getup was not at all suitable for skydiving. He had no helmet, no gloves, no skydiving glasses, and no proper shoes. In such a situation, he had jumped into an area of mountains, forests, and rivers, laden with a bag full of $200,000 and a briefcase, giving him no chance of survival. However, this FBI assumption was soon dispelled when, after Cooper's incident, several copycat hijackings occurred one after another, in which every hijacker hijacked a plane in the same way as Cooper, demanded millions of dollars in ransom, and jumped from the plane in normal clothes without any skydiving gear, landing safely. Although all these copycat hijackers were arrested by the FBI, the one who couldn't be caught was D.B. Cooper. The FBI investigated him in every possible way to catch him. On one hand, he was being searched by military police, helicopters, spy jets, and submarines in the possible landing zone, while on the other hand, the FBI published the serial numbers of every note of the $200,000 given to Cooper in newspapers. The serial numbers were distributed to banks, shops, casinos, and every place where they could be spent. People were appealed that if anyone found a note with any of those serial numbers, they should inform the FBI. This information was disseminated worldwide through the media. Additionally, the FBI investigated about 800 suspects in the 5 years after the hijacking, but only about 24 suspects were marked as having any chance of being D.B. Cooper. However, even after thoroughly investigating all of them, the FBI was disappointed. The twist in this whole story comes in February 1980, when 8-year-old Brian Ingram found 3 bundles of $20 notes near the Columbia River on Tina Bar Beach. They were in very poor condition, and their total amount was about $5,800. The serial numbers on them exactly matched the money given to D.B. Cooper. For the first time, about 9 years after the hijacking, the FBI had a concrete clue, so it was hoped that this case would now be solved. But in reality, the case became even more complicated here instead of being resolved. The place where the money was found was 32 kilometers away from where Cooper's landing zone was believed to be and where he was being searched. So the question was, how did this money get there from here? There could be 2 reasons for the money being there. First, Cooper had jumped somewhere near this place, and therefore some money fell out while jumping and remained there. The second possibility was that Cooper jumped where he was searched, but some money fell out of his bag while jumping and flowed down the Lewis River to the Columbia River, and then from there flowed to Tina Bar Beach. But the problem here was that where the Lewis River meets the Columbia River flows in the opposite direction to Tina Bar. In such a situation, it was not possible for the money to flow in the opposite direction of the river and reach that one place all at once. Whatever the reason for the money being there, immediately after its discovery, the FBI began searching the area. Many places were dug up and searches were conducted all around, but the FBI found nothing besides these 3 bundles. Neither more money nor any torn piece of a parachute was found, nor any other clue related to Cooper could be found. Thus, years passed. Neither Cooper was found, nor did the FBI's investigation stop. Every possible area continued to be scoured. All suspects resembling D.B. Cooper were investigated. Some of these suspects were even handed over to the FBI by their own family members. Someone claimed their uncle was D.B. Cooper, while another spoke of their brother being D.B. Seeing the popularity of the case, some people surrendered themselves to the FBI claiming to be D.B. Cooper. But even after years of investigation, the FBI found no solid evidence of any of them being D.B. Cooper. Years turned into decades and 2011 arrived. During these 40 years, the FBI deeply investigated about 1,000 suspects. By this time, so many files of this case had been created that if they were stacked one on top of another, their height would be about 40 feet. Among the suspects targeted by the FBI, The most important one was Richard Floyd McCoy, who, about 4 months after Cooper's hijacking in 1972, hijacked a plane of the same company in the same way. He had collected $500,000 in ransom and, like Cooper, jumped from the plane. However, he was caught just 5 days later, but when he was investigated, he was not the real Cooper. He was merely 29 years old, while Cooper was around 45, so due to his age and the flight attendant's description, he was removed from the list of possible Coopers. Later, he was shot and killed by the police while escaping from jail. Another interesting case was seen in 1995, when Jo Weber claimed that her deceased husband, Dwayne Weber, was D.B. Cooper. She said that Dwayne, who had always had a scar on his stomach, used to say that it was from a parachute accident. After his death, Jo found a key to a safe deposit box. When she opened it, she found a map of the Columbia River and a bag containing $200. Dwayne used to come home with expensive things, but he never told her where the money came from. He never used to smoke, but he used to bring cigarettes home. A few days before his death, Dwayne had told Jo that he had been Cooper. She said that after the hijacking, Dwayne had landed somewhere, then driven a short distance, stopped his car near the Columbia River, told his wife to wait there, and disappeared for a while. This was around the same place where Brian Ingram found the money. According to Jo, her husband had buried that money there. But Dwayne Weber, whom Jo claimed was D.B. Cooper, was indeed a criminal, but Cooper's DNA did not match his, which is why he was also not the real D.B. Cooper. The way D.B. Cooper chose military parachutes for the jump and his good understanding of the Boeing 727 led experts to believe that D.B. Cooper was someone connected to the military who had experience in skydiving with military parachutes. Based on all these facts, another person was suggested to be D.B. Cooper, named Kenneth Christensen. This person had worked for Northwest Orient Airlines and had also been a paratrooper, giving him a lot of experience with military parachutes. He lived in the same area where the hijacking took place, and what highlighted him most as D.B. Cooper was that his appearance closely resembled D.B. Cooper's, and his nature was also calm like Cooper's. He also had a fondness for cigarettes and bourbon drinks. Just a year after the hijacking, he bought a very large house, disproportionate to his income. His brother also found a note written by him in which he talked about a Hollywood director making a movie about him. Before he died, he told his brother that there was a secret he should know, but he wouldn't tell him. This seems like a perfect match for D.B. Cooper. However, all these things came to light many years after his death, through his brother. Additionally, calling all these facts mere coincidences, the FBI did not consider Kenneth Christensen to be D.B. Cooper. Besides him, many other important suspects were linked to D.B. Cooper, but the investigation proved none of them to be D.B. Cooper. Thus, after 45 years of investigating thousands of suspects and scouring many places, no trace of D.B. Cooper could be found. The cigarette butts found on his seat mysteriously disappeared in later years, and the clues found on his tie were of no use in finding him. This case remained a mysterious tale for the world, while it had become a headache for the FBI. Therefore, in July 2016, the FBI, exhausted, closed the case. However, the D.B. Cooper case is so popular that many independent investigators are still trying their luck to solve the D.B. Cooper mystery. D.B. Cooper had created a fan following in America, and he had become a hero to many people. People believed that the way Cooper executed the hijacking cleanly and disappeared, and the way he evaded the FBI was commendable. In Ariel, Washington, near where Cooper jumped, there is a bar where D.B. Cooper Day is celebrated every year on November 24th. And his success is celebrated. More than 50 years have passed, but the mystery has not yet been revealed. Who exactly was D.B. Cooper? What was his real name? Where did he come from? And where did he vanish into thin air after jumping from an altitude of 10,000 feet amidst the dark of night and a fierce storm? If you found this story worth knowing, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.